the 2018 50th anniversary box set of the White Album. Slightly different to the two we've seen so far in that it's a rectangular shape. This is an outer plastic transparent cover, so it has these prints of the 4 photographs on the inside. But these are just overlaid on the white background, as well as the track listing for the 6 CDs and Blu-ray information. Then it just says The Beatles on the side. So pulling this plastic slip cover off, we have just the book itself, which contains all the CDs. Not sure if this is coming up on camera, but The Beatles is embossed at the bottom, just as it was on the original album. Nothing on the back, just a plain white sleeve, in keeping with its original theme. So at the front we have the 2 CDs that comprise the new stereo mix, as well as the Blu-ray, which has a 5.1 mix and also contains the original mono mix. Nice that you get all 3 of those there. I'm not going to bother taking these sleeves out because they're all the same. They all just have the same front cover with the Beatles embossed and the track listing on the back. So this book is the thickest, given that it has the most tracks to discuss, as this is the longest album, but we still get an intro by Paul and by Giles Martin. Lots of photos, a discussion of the events leading up to the White Album, including the Magical Mystery Tour film and Brian Epstein's death. Epstein, that is. Can I take you back where I came from? So just, again, more historical context, some people's recollections and thoughts on the album in retrospect. And then we get on a different type of cardstock, not glossy. This is more of a paper stock. We get, it looks like a notebook, and it just has clips of different handwritten lyrics for many of the songs, which is interesting. So all the lyrics are contained in one spot, and it's made to look kind of like a notebook, which I thought was a fun idea. Then we get the track-by-track details. So all of side 1, different recording sheets with the track details, pictures, tape boxes, etc. Standard fare at this point in the series. Martha, my dear, yada yada yada. We're on to side 2 now. At the end of side 2, where there's a disc break, we get a page break with pictures. Now we're on to side 3. And again, this is very detailed about how the tape is used, what instruments are recorded where, how many reduction mixes were done, how many takes were done. Side 4. And then we also get details about the Inner Light, Lady Madonna, the original Across the Universe, Hey Jude. All of this, different versions of it, is included in the sessions material. Not Guilty, What's the New Mary Jane, and then some songs that were recorded only on the Escher Demo CD, Sour Milk Sea, Junk, Child of Nature, Mean Mr. Mustard, Circles, Polythene Pam. There were never takes attempted of those at Abbey Road, but they are on the Escher Demos CD. The Mad Day Out, so what day was it, 28th July or something, 68, where they took a bunch of these photos, which have been published in a variety of releases, but I've certainly never seen these ones before that are in this book. Notes about the cover, which are more detailed than you might imagine, given there's not much there, but there's details about how the poster was created and just the impact of the cover. This one guy who collects different versions of the White Album, just to see the covers in various conditions, and then an essay about the release and reception, again by Kevin Howlett, along with track listing. At the back of the book, we have a little pocket which contains the 4 individual pictures that would have been with the original LP, as well as the poster. Only to fit in this box, it's folded into 9 panels instead of 6, but it is an exact replica of the original poster, complete with lyrics on the back with sides labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4 as they would have been initially. And then at the very back we have the rest of the discs. So we have the Escher Demos, and then we have 3 CDs, the most of any of these sets for sessions, that include many of the songs I just named, as well as most of the stuff that's on the White Album. You get individual takes of that as well. So that is the White Album box set. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, both music posts and music review. This is chapter 10 of the Beatles Deep Dive, where we talk about the White Album 2018 box set. Let's start with the original album, because the White Album is arguably the most divisive album in the Beatles catalog. This was the first studio album by the Beatles that I ever bought. I bought the 2009 remaster of the White Album and the 1 CD on the same day. I believe it was my 11th birthday. And I listened to the one compilation first, and then I listened to the White Album. I don't know what attracted me to that one as opposed to the other ones that were available at that time, but I just went for it because I thought the idea of the stark white cover seemed fascinating. And of course, it's ubiquitous. I had heard about it long before I actually heard it. And so I went with it. And at the time, I loved it. It was my favorite one of my favorite albums of all time, really, for several years of my childhood, even as I discovered some of the others, including Abbey Road and Let It Be, and then eventually got the whole 2009 stereo remaster set and heard everything that there was to listen to. But the White Album always had a special place in my heart. It still does. But my opinion has changed over the years. I think I loved it so much at first just because I loved how whimsical it was and how diverse it was, as well as just the fact that it's a double album I thought was cool, and there's so much on it, and you get a fair sampling of most of everybody's material, I guess. But my opinion has changed over the years as I've fallen more in love with the more experimental stuff, Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, as well as the beautiful embellishments and historical context of Abbey Road. And the White Album has sort of fallen down the list for me. It's still a great album, and I still enjoy it, listening to it start to finish, but I am not convinced it's a perfect double album. I'm not. Perfect double albums are extremely hard. There's really only two that I can think of. Of all the double albums I've listened to, there's so many that I love, and they all seem to fall apart around side 3 is the trend that I've noticed, or the start of the second disc if it's a CD double album. There's only two perfect double albums that I can really think of, which are Stadium Arcadium by the Red Hot Chili Peppers and The Fragile by 9 Inch Nails. The Fragile is one of my 3 favorite albums of all time. Other than that, there's not been that many double albums that I think are just perfect, flawless, start to finish. And the White Album is no exception. There is a lot of fluff on this album. I am just going to come out and say it. Even though all the songs are justified in their existence, and the flow of the album kind of makes it easy to listen to as it jumps from style to style, from songwriter to songwriter, there is a lot of fluff on the album. There's a lot of songs that I think, compared to what the Beatles did the previous year in 1967, are very weak songs. I am not holding any punches when I say this, because I think compared to what they did on Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, some of these songs really do not deserve as much of a place on an album as they have. Things like Wild Honey Pie for a start, Bungalow Bill, not a big fan of that one. Let's just get the obvious right out of the way. The standout track on the album by far is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. One of the best songs the Beatles ever recorded, and it, in my opinion, eclipses everything else on the album tenfold. I mean, the arrangement is beautiful. The song itself is just perfect. The lyrics are incredibly poetic and meaningful. And above all else, Eric Clapton's guitar solo on it is absolutely effing perfect. The lead guitar is just phenomenal. It is a masterclass on how to do tasteful lead guitar on a pop song. None of the other songs on the album even come within a kilometer of how good While My Guitar Gently Weeps is. At the time when I first heard it, I might not have said that, but I can say it with certainty now, that While My Guitar Gently Weeps is far, 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 far better than anything else on the album. That said, there are some other really good moments. I particularly like most of John's contributions. I really like, I've always really liked Cry Baby Cry. There's just such a weird eeriness to it that I think is really cool. I've always really liked Sexy Sadie for the same reason, just the piano sound at the beginning. There's a weird creepiness to it that just gives it such a vibe to me. I really like Dear Prudence a lot. I really like I'm So Tired a lot. Many of his songs I like. I do enjoy Julia. I don't think it's one of the best moments on the album. Many of Paul's songs I think are weak compared to what he's capable of and what he would show us on Abbey Road and on Let It Be, and especially Sgt. Pepper. The exception being Blackbird. I think Blackbird is one of the best songs of all time, and that's just a beautiful song. I feel like they could have embellished the arrangement more, but maybe the fact that it's simpler is better, I guess. Um, Ringo's song Don't Pass Me By is by no means a standout track, but it's nice to hear him write something, and even George's other songs. I really do like Piggies a lot, but Long, Long, Long and Savoy Truffle, I certainly don't dislike either of them, but neither of them are standout highlights for me. Um, and the rest of the album, I mean, listening to it start to finish is fine, but I don't think some of the other songs really have the merit and the beauty that a lot of the Beatles' other tracks do. In sequence, it works, but the songs themselves I don't think hold up well out of context, except for Blackbird, Cry Baby Cry, and of course While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is the standout track of the album by far. It's the standout track of this entire period, including up to the Twickenham and Apple sessions in '69. People might call me crazy, but I think While My Guitar Gently Weeps is a better song than Let It Be and The Long and Winding Road and those ballads that Paul is so celebrated for, and other tracks like Get Back and Don't Let Me Down. I just think While My Guitar Gently Weeps eclipses all of them a million times. It's such a beautiful song, and it really indicates why it's no wonder George was getting frustrated by the fact that his stuff was not getting used, that some of his other beautiful tracks that would end up on his solo album, namely the title track, All Things Must Pass, were being sidelined in favor of things like Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except Me and My Monkey, which I think is one of the worst tracks on the album, and things like that. Of course, it's still the Beatles, so it's still a great record overall, but yeah, compared to the two in front of it and the final album, Abbey Road, I personally think it's a very weak album by comparison, and I do not think it's a perfect double album. I think it may be a good starting point for the Beatles just because it gives you so much insight as to their individual personalities. It's certainly what did that for me because it was my starting point into their studio catalog, but as I got back into the other albums, I realized that it's not as accomplished as what came before and after it. Those are my opinions of the White Album. Now onto the box set. With all that said, again, Giles Martin's stereo remix is fantastic, as is the surround mix. The fact that they have 8-track tape to play with now means there's a lot more variability in the way things can be placed, and I think they work really well. So both the stereo and the 5.1 mix are amazing. And again, like the Sgt. Pepper box set, you do get the mono mix as well included on the Blu-ray. I would argue the mono mix of this album is less essential than for Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, but it was, again, the mix that the band was still more involved with, and this would have been the last album to have a dedicated mono mix. Everything after this was stereo only, so great that that's included there. And to my ears, it does sound better than the 2009 CD version included in the mono box set. It sounds like there's less EQing, and it's more true to what the original master tape would have sounded like. I could be wrong about that, but it definitely sounded more crisp and clean than the remastered version of the 2009 White Album. So it's nice that it's there. And then you get one of the buying points of the box sets is certainly the Escher demos. Now, I did buy the Deluxe anniversary vinyl that has the double album, and then it has a double album of the Escher demos as well. I ended up selling that because I found I was not going back to the Escher demos on vinyl that much. But it is great to still have them on CD. The demos are fantastic. It really is the Beatles unplugged. So they're embellished with double-tracked vocals and stuff, but the fact that some of the songs are really together and some of them are not quite there yet is, it's interesting just to hear these works in progress and to hear really just the solo Beatles embellishing their ideas with some very basic arrangements that honestly could have worked. And in terms of like Blackbird and Julia, those ended up pretty much identical to how they would on the album. Because they were very sparse arrangements from the get-go. So those demos are nice, and you also get tracks that didn't make the finished cut, including George's demo of Sour Milk Sea, which he gave to Jackie Lomax. Child of Nature, What's the New Mary Jane, which is a song I've never really cared for, but to hear the demo of it is fascinating. Of all the Escher demos, the ones that I like the most are While My Guitar Gently Weeps and the Cry Baby Cry demo, which unsurprisingly were my favorite tracks on the album. The Obla Di Obla Da demo is interesting too. That's another track that just from Paul, I at the time I heard it when I was young, I really liked it, and I've grown to really dislike it as time goes on. I actually find that track kind of annoying, I won't lie. I certainly don't hate it, but I think just compared to some of his other brilliant work, it's not a magical track by any means, and the fact that it made the album is kind of, yeah, whatever. And going back to the original album, Revolution 9, it's still terrifying, and for that reason I think it's fascinating, but is it actually like a meritorious track? I don't know. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly, but it is fascinating that it did make the final cut. Yeah, and then you get 3 session CDs, so lots and lots of outtakes, including stuff that was not on the White Album, like Lady Madonna and Across the Universe and Hey Jude, things like that. So where this box falls short, I think, is it could have included a surround and new stereo mix of Hey Jude, and Lady Madonna, The Inner Light, things like that. The single tracks that didn't make it onto the album. Oh, and the single version of Revolution. You get demo, or rather studio work-in-progress versions of all those tracks, but you don't get new remixes of them. Although they are featured on 1+, so maybe that's why, but yeah, they could have added those to the disc to add more value for money, the same way that they added Paperback Writer and Rain to the Revolver box set, and Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane to the Sgt. Pepper box set. So that could have been done and wasn't. That was a bit of a missed opportunity. But the fact that you do get 3 session CDs to hear the work in progress is fascinating, and this probably has the most to offer in terms of that, because this album they were doing lots and lots and lots of takes of everything. So to hear how the songs developed across different versions made on different days is interesting. In terms of value for money, this one probably is the most value for money because it has the most in it. It has the Escher demos, 3 CDs of sessions, the album itself is a double album, and it includes the original mono mix, and the posters, and the pictures, and the book. So overall, it's probably the best value for money of all these super deluxe sets. That said, I don't think it is as valuable personally as the Sgt. Pepper album, because this album I like less, and it's less interesting to hear it deconstructed than the Sgt. Pepper album. Now, I know I might attract some negativity by talking about the White Album in this way. Again, it's the Beatles, so of course it's great, and of course it's still a special album, of course I still like it, but I think it's also okay to be critical of the band and say not everything they did was perfect. They were not infallible. They did things that were not right, as Magical Mystery Tour is evidence of. I'm just kidding. I actually like Magical Mystery Tour, the album and the film, even more than I like the White Album at this point. But that said, I think it's important to acknowledge, like, part of the reason this album gets the acclaim that it does is because it's towards the end of their career, it's a double album, and it was a massive success, and the Beatles themselves, their career tells a very interesting story, and that's why every chapter in it has value. And so, is it worth hearing? Of course it is. It's wonderful. It's the Beatles. Is it my favorite Beatles album? 10 years ago, yes. Now, nope. I would put Sgt. Pepper, Revolver, Abbey Road, Rubber Soul, and Help all ahead of the White Album, just because they're more perfectly constructed. But the White Album is still a classic album that needs to be heard. And this box set is a great way of hearing it. The remix is great. If you're not interested in the sessions and the Escher demos, then you can pick up the deluxe edition with just the demos and the original album on vinyl. I think that goes for around $50, or just the remix of the album on just the standard double vinyl. So all of those are available, and if you're just interested in the remix, just get the vinyl. That's what I would say. But if you would like the full experience, including the track-by-track details, which again, to me, is one of the best parts of each of the box sets, it's for sure worth a check out. I believe I paid maybe $120 for this back in 2021, it's probably going for well over that now because I don't think it's in print anymore. I think it was a limited edition that did sell out. So you might have to go to the collector's market or pay a more premium price for it. If you want a brand new copy, you're probably looking at closer to $200 now. So if it's worth it to you, then you can pick it up. Personally, I wouldn't pay that much for it. I think the price I paid for it was probably about fair, given the quality of the book and the amount of material that's included. And again, is it worth? I'm certainly going to keep it because I'm going to keep everything Beatles. The Beatles are the best band of all time, no question about it, and the White Album is an important chapter in their career. That said, it's probably in the future, outside the context of this deep dive, the one that I'll go back to the least, apart from possibly the surround mix, which I think is really cool, and the Escher demos, which are interesting and do kind of stand on their own, so that might be fun to listen to from time to time. Those are my opinions. Let me know in the comments. What do you think? What's your favorite track from the White Album? The correct answer is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. JK, you can disagree with me. It's okay. Do you think I'm being too hard on it? Personally, I don't think I am. I think I'm just saying what I think. Do you have the box set? What do you think of it? What do you think of the new remix? Answer those questions. Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.